Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee. We have 3 items on today's agenda, but we are actually going to flip the order somewhat. We're going to start with item number 2, and then we'll go to item number 1 and then 3. And item number 2 is our oversight work session of the Technology and Enterprise Business Solutions, also known as TEBS, which was formerly DTS, Department of Technology Services. And then we'll go to an oversight work session on the cable plan. And finally, we'll have a work session on expedited bill 33-21, personnel employees retirement system group E amendments. We wanted to switch the order so we can get a broader look at TEBS's activities for FY22 before we get into program specifics with the cable plan. I am sure that we will all have tons of questions, observations, comments based on our own work from home experiences. And as committee chair, it is really my privilege to facilitate today's discussion on a very timely item. So with that, I am going to talk a little bit, talk a little bit more about the fact that I think has been timely that the EBS has shifted their focus, even their name. Who knew that we were going to be thrown into this very rapid change, and issues of digital access definitely have become front and center even more with our county employees, with our students, et cetera. So there's a need, I think, to really rethink how we are going to continue to address these capacity issues that are not going to go away. And so for me, I think this is really important work, and government operations committee has been engaged in these conversations for a long time. And I am so grateful to Dr. Casas-Torregas because he was constantly pushing us to not just think, in a linear fashion, but laterally as we addressed a lot of issues, thinking through some horizon issues, et cetera. And here we are today. It seems extraordinary that it's all here, where we were all just anticipating maybe perhaps would happen in the future. So I welcome everyone. I'll turn to Dr. Torregas to introduce everybody who is here for this work session and to walk us through some of these highlights, and as well as some of the possible discussion points. Dr. Torregas.
Thank you very much, Ms. Navarro. I'll be very brief. As you know, the council agreed to have these oversight hearings so that the departments would have a chance to meet with the committees, those departments that did not get a hearing during the budget season. TEBS is an extremely important organization, as you have underlined. So I'm very pleased to introduce my good friend, Gail Roper, who's our CIO, and who has been a godsend for the county, I think, in terms of the right person at the right time to really take leadership of the technology that has been absolutely key, not just to our survival, but to our thriving and moving forward. So, Gail, I know that you've got several of your key staff members, and I'll let you introduce them. We also have Julie Knight from OMB with us as well, in addition to the TEBS personnel, but I'll let my friend Gail take over from now. So, Gail, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Torregas. I have with me today Allison Dollar, who is our strategy and planning director. I also have our chief broadband officer, Joe Webster, whom I think you all know. He's doing an incredible job with pushing the FiberNet 3 asset forward. Derek Kinney, he's kind of our secret weapon as it relates to our video, and you'll see some of his work exhibited today in our presentation. I also have Shana Taki. Shana is our change management director. And, as we move forward with the presentation, you'll see a representation of why we believe change management for technology had to be better utilized, why we thought that business process reengineering and having an agile way of providing technology to the organization was critical to our ability. I would just say that change management and the work that they've done with the 311 call center, and we'll give you some specifics there. I've been very impressed with some of the talent that within the organization, and some of this talent existed. They just really needed some direction and an ability to put those great talents to work. I think I might be Skylar is also, because I don't have a whole list. Am I missing?
I'm here, Gail.
Okay, there she is. Skylar is also Secret Weapon. These people existed within DTS, but we say TEBS just brought these gifts to the table. So we're going to quickly move through the presentation. A lot of it is self-explanatory, and we certainly are available to answer any questions that you might have.
Gail, are you going to drive the presentation?
It's coming.
Okay, great.
Can everybody see my screen? Okay, great. So we are
Yes, I
actually
can.
Wonderful, thank you. So Gail is going to be kicking it off, but before Gail kicks it off, we actually have a little bit of a surprise we want to share with everyone in the spirit of TEBS.
Formerly DTS, we have shifted from a maintenance-oriented and reactive approach. Now, the Department of Technology and Enterprise Business Solutions, TEBS, we are focused on proactively working with and consulting with our business partners. Our ultimate goal is to provide rapid delivery on innovative solutions to better serve our residents. In 2021, we changed our name, realigned our organization, and transformed the way we work to support our newly established strategic goals. We've focused on rapidly addressing resident needs during the COVID-19 pandemic, expanded telework options by providing training, secure connections, 24/7 help desk support to continue an efficient work mode in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Upgraded 220 county schools with FiberNet 3 infrastructure in the span of just 11 days, which increased MCPS's bandwidth by 10 times and allowed for better virtual learning. We also doubled upload and download speeds for our MocoNet digital equity customers at Main Street and Upton 2 apartments to 100 megabytes per second symmetrical speeds. Launched a video podcast, What's Happening Moco, that informs viewers about government resources and events in Montgomery County. Created a COVID-19 vaccination pre-registration system and leveraged our Microsoft Enterprise Agreement to obtain free consultant assistance. Launched a COVID-19 website that accounts for more than 15% of total county page views. A joint initiative with the Connect Montgomery Alliance. Implemented virtual agents for HHS and 311 that answered and resolved resident questions without any human assistance. TEBS fiscal year 22 goals include enhance and expand countywide customer service initiatives, introduce a content management framework, and streamline organizational processes to provide the best service to the community. Take a comprehensive approach to our infrastructure, including ERP and CRM replacement, discovery, connectivity, speed, business continuity, disaster recovery, and data. This is TEBS, consulting, strategizing, and innovating.
That's awesome.
So now we will move into the PowerPoint presentation, and we won't kill you with slides, but just a little bit more depth in terms of what we've been doing and where we're going. There are two things that I wanted to mention this morning about technology in general. The effect of the pandemic has accelerated digital transformation by as much as 7 years. So what we've seen is this surge in technology, and with the TEBS organization, we know that we have a lot of work to do going forward, and that we need to find the best way that we can to deliver agile services. The other trend that stuck with me was that, and this is above and beyond technology organizations, but 78% of organizations have neither a strategy nor their outcomes defined. And we knew we had to dig deep and begin to understand how we benefit how we could benefit the organization. We realized that some of the old governance models weren't working in our favor, and that providing consultative services and solutions moves the organization forward, defining collaboration, and opportunities with the departments and our vendors has proven great value. Everybody loves a mission statement, but of course, here is ours, and it really kind of aligns with what we've already said about shifting the organization from a maintenance organization to a consultative organization that really does a deep dive as it relates to research, implementation strategies that solve real problems. Next, please. Our priorities, and you'll see this in our strategic plan. We want it to be actionable. So we set these strategic priorities, but we also wanted to know what it would look like after setting these priorities and understanding the impact that it would have. Of course, with your support, we reorganized the organization, the TEBS organization, of course, changed the name of the organization and changed our focus, of course, from a maintenance organization to a consultative organization. We had to identify a governance framework. So basically, how were we going to govern technology? And there's a lot to unpack there, even as we think about the centralization of technology, how it's managed countywide, the opportunities that we could take to capitalize on financial gains by doing bulk purchasing and having departments adhere to standardization as it relates to our ability to have our systems protected from cybersecurity attacks. I mentioned, I did mention change management. We'll talk more about that. Shana will talk more about that. One of our biggest challenges has been, one of the more significant challenges has been the lack of investment in our systems, in our core infrastructure. And before we can get to an innovation state, we really do have to set that foundation. And it's really no different than any other aspect of our lives. If the core is not in place and working seamlessly, then it's very difficult to move towards nascent technologies. We've done a little bit of it, and we have modified some of our existing legacy systems, like the 311 system with AI. But we definitely need to do more of that. And then our portfolio. So we have this pending portfolio of legacy systems like ERP system or 311 system. And we are certainly moving towards making certain that that portfolio meets the needs of the organization. One of the things that we've talked about with OMB, our budget organization, is making sure that if we buy systems, that the systems meet the needs of more than one department. That we are looking at enterprise solutions, and that we're not buying disparate systems and having to hire people, human capital, and support systems that really could be combined. The only other thing I'd say before we leave this slide is that cloud is where we're going. We have quite a significant server farm with multiple servers serving various departments. What we gain from cloud implementation is a lot of strategy as it relates to standardization. It protects us in a better fashion from cybersecurity attacks. And we'll begin to diminish some of the investment that we have made in managing a large number of servers. And Joe Webster is going to talk about our ability to use FiberNet 3, a significant asset for the county to accomplish some of that. Next slide, please. This slide really kind of talks overall about COVID-19. I would say that we learned quite a bit going through that event. I don't think it's over. It certainly isn't over for us, but we gleaned a lot of lessons learned from the COVID-19 work that we did, including how important it is for our resident citizens to have the support that they need. So we call it UX, which really means that we were very much focused on our citizens and the services that we provided them. We did automate digitized quite a bit of the services that individuals had to come into the county to attain prior to COVID. We won't go back either. And, that's the good thing. I talked about moving ahead 7 years in terms of digitization, and we won't go backwards. We will definitely extend that momentum going forward and find out how we better serve our citizens as we move forward with technology. Our staff. So we talked about the reorg. Part of that was really providing resources to the staff. We've got new tools. Our toolbox has changed tremendously. We're using what the industry calls low code, no code. We were actually able to build our COVID registration system in 7 hours. And that's phenomenal. I can remember a time when it would took 7 months, or you would have to hire a team of programmers to do that kind of work. But we've adopted the low code, no code, agile methodology where we're able to extend technology in an expeditious fashion that really does target the problem and begin to provide the services that are needed in a more expeditious fashion. Next slide. So Allison Dollar is going to present this slide.
Actually, I was going to present slide 3. I believe, Shana, are you presenting on this slide? Yeah.
Oh,
no problem.
So as Gail mentioned, the ability to leverage, part of our strategic goals are to rapidly deliver solutions. And then really consult on people, process, and technology. So looking at our problems with our business owners comprehensively before we implement technology has really been the theme. And so some of our accomplishments during COVID, as Gail mentioned, we implemented our testing registration system for COVID-19 at a very rapid pace. And we worked with our partners in HHS and DOT, fire rescue, across the organization to be able to develop and deliver that implementation. I will talk in a little bit more detail about MC311. We have, had this discussion previously, and I'd like to provide you with an update. But at a high level, the change management approach that we took to our residents and their challenges during COVID with 311 in reaching an operator, again, really took that comprehensive perspective. And we did, through our delivery of that people, process, and technology kind of combination, yielded some very rapid improvements for our resident experience within 311. We also implemented our first virtual agents at the county. So we implemented Monty, who is our website chatbot on our 311 website. And we also implemented a virtual agent on the HHS vaccination helpline so that when residents were calling to become, pre-registered for their vaccines, they were able to go through a list of, current dynamic criteria so that before they reached a staff person, it was clear to the resident, whether or not they were qualified at that point in time to receive a vaccine. Other accomplishments during COVID, again, this theme of kind of rapidly providing agile solutions. So in just 11 days, we were able to increase the bandwidth for 220 of our MCPS partners in their schools. We also developed our COVID-19 website for our residents and many applications to support the services that Montgomery County were providing for residents through the grant funding, and other opportunities for the residents. We also had, multiple applications that we built specifically for our business partners to support our residents during COVID. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we'll unpack 311 just a little bit. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we really looked at the problem with 311 during COVID as a comprehensive approach. We realized that we really had to look at the entire picture for why were residents spending over 20 minutes on hold to reach an operator during this critical time where they needed services immediately. We partnered with many different partners within our organization, including obviously 311, but also HHS and county stat and OMB. And we took a comprehensive approach to look at the issues from the resident's experience, not from our experience. So how was the resident feeling as they were waiting on hold to try to get rental assistance? And how could we rapidly streamline that process really in real time? So this approach of, comprehensive solution really proved successful for us. Next slide. As Gail mentioned, we are leveraging our existing infrastructure to make improvements, in real time. So on our telephone system, we added self-service options on the 311 phone system so that residents, instead of waiting on hold, would receive information where they could go to our websites to apply for the services that they needed, as opposed to having to wait for a representative. We also made improvements and enhancements to our CBOL system, which is outdated, as we all know. We did make those enhancements so that 311 could better respond to our residents through, for example, residents could upload files and photos to the service requests that they were inputting on our website. And then lastly, as I mentioned, the low no-code solution. So our chatbot was introduced. We were able to, in 2 weeks of a turnaround time, load the 30 top questions that were coming in from residents, and then provide that self-service, artificially driven technology so that the resident could go onto the website and quickly get the answers that they needed. So just to focus on the governance piece of this, what we really learned is that when we come together and we have clear priorities, we have clear, focused success measures based on the needs of our residents, listening to our residents, we get success. And so we did. We had our abandonment rate within 311. It was about 20% in January. So people were hanging up at about 20% rate, which is quite high, to less than 3% in March. And the hold times decreased from an average of 5 minutes to less than 1 minute. We want to mobilize this structure moving forward. So TEBS has introduced a governance structure for organizational customer service that will work exactly as we worked during COVID. We're going to have our subcommittees focused on various areas of customer service so that we can prioritize, we can work together, and we can prepare for future events. We know that other surge events will happen, and we need to be better prepared as an organization. Next slide. Other FY21 accomplishments include our focus on business continuity. So as we know, we have mission critical systems and applications that we need to prioritize, we need to do impact analysis on those applications, and we need to do that as an organization. It can't happen in a vacuum. So we have formed a TEBS-led innovation team that works across the executive branch to prioritize our systems, analyze the ways that we can keep it safe, and also come together with some shared funding strategies so that we do this together and not in a vacuum. And then keeping us safe, obviously one of the highest priorities, the highest priority for TEBS. We have developed new security policies. We have implemented multi-factor authentication across the counties, that two-factor authentication. And we've also procured and implemented data loss prevention tools. Again, wrapped around this idea that we are continually working our hardest to keep the county safe. And then I'll close this portion just by highlighting some of the accomplishments that we did achieve in FY21, and that includes NACO awards, Microsoft and our Zamo vendor partner for our chatbot, case studies and awards, and then Smart City and the Center for Digital Government. So we're very happy with the work that we did for our residents in 21, and we can only enhance and progress that moving forward. And I'll hand it back to Gail. Thank you.
So next slide, please. So when we talk about what we learned, it has been quite a challenge as it relates to our investment strategy and our infrastructure. So what we are seeing is that there has been a decade or more long lack of investment in our infrastructure. So what does that mean? That means that we have equipment, core equipment that is past its life cycle. What happens when you have situations like that? It's kind of like having an older car. The system begins to break down, and for us, from a cybersecurity perspective, these systems aren't capable of accepting the cyber software that protects our network. So if we were in a catastrophic event, we would be challenged to continue to be productive and to have business continuity across the organization. So what we're doing now is we are working towards understanding what the investment looks like to bring those systems up to date. We're also working, we've partnered with the departments and the Gartner Group to come up with a priority list. We call it we call it RTO. So basically, we need to know what the impact is if we were to have a catastrophic event, what the impact is to the county. What we know we have to do, some of the things we know we have to do is we have to pay employees, we have to pay retirees, we will have to continue to accept revenues and work within our financial systems and keep those systems up and running. So this business continuity study that we are leading will begin to look at all the aspects of continuity and what needs to happen from emergency plans to equipment issues. We've had challenges with equipment that has failed during outages. One of the initiatives that we have is to move our PBX to the cloud. So our telephone services will be in the cloud. And what ends up happening there for the organization is that we gain quite a bit of functionality from the cloud services available to us. And then we also have an opportunity to have more coverage in terms of cybersecurity because those patches and upgrades happen within the cloud rather than having individuals who are having to put their hands on systems to do that within the organization. Not all of it will go away, but we'll certainly gain some efficiencies by moving towards the cloud. I talked about the telephone system. Joe Webster is going to talk more about FiberNet 3. So one of the reasons that I took the job in Montgomery County was I was excited about this FiberNet 3 asset. This is a huge benefit for Montgomery County to have that asset available. But I also thought that Joe and I both thought that we could do more with it. That there was an equity opportunity there with FiberNet 3, and that we could also utilize it to provide connectivity to the departments, but in a better way. So we are going to, at the end of this year, actually, we will have solutions to go to Ashburn, Virginia, to the Equinix data center. And we'll have to talk more about that with council because we see economic development opportunities there as we move towards this implementation and this boosting of the FiberNet 3 asset. I'm going to not take Joe's thunder and talk too much about it, but this is a major, unique opportunity for Montgomery County as we move forward. The Disaster Recovery Innovation Team, we've worked with Dr. Charegas, the Gartner Group. We meet with Dr. Charegas as an advisor because of his expertise in the cybersecurity arena, and will continue to do that. And we have a report that is due on November 1 that will begin to outline some of our tactical strategies. We will support a tabletop exercise that will even help the council understand what their role is in the event of a ransomware attack. So we want to make sure that everybody knows what is expected of them if we are in a disaster situation. We will also do a business impact analysis that says which systems need to come up first. There is a cost associated with how quickly these systems come up, so we want to invest in the right way and target those systems that we know are important to our continuing to do county work. These last few items are associated with some of the updates. We've been able to continue to replace PCs. We were a few years behind in terms of our ability to refresh laptops. And we've got a warehouse solution now in place where we're actually able to have individuals come in, even during the pandemic, to come in and replace their dated laptops. So we want to keep that refreshed so we don't get back into a situation where we have laptops that are not functional. We talked a bit about the PBX system and improving our call distribution. The help desk has a new cloud-based system that they are working with, and then we're beginning to support Apple MacBooks, which makes me very happy. And I'm sure there are others in the organization that would prefer to be on a MacBook. But these are some of the things that we've been able to accomplish. We've talked quite a bit about our website and what needs to happen with our website. So I think sometimes the impression is that, you know, there's some easy way to improve a website. I would say that my observations have been that we need to really embark on researching a content management system. The website is decentralized, so there are a lot of efforts that reside within departments, and in the continuity of that sometimes doesn't happen. We also need to do a deep dive into purging some of the information that is on the website. You do that through content management, and having a content management system that kind of gives you the functionality to look at what you have and understand either whether it's still desirable or whether you need to add information. But that standardization in terms of framework and information, the way pages look, that will come from a content management effort. Again, county infrastructure, basically understanding that we need to standardize and upgrade even things like generators. So we have generators that need to be replaced. We have situations where maybe the cooling in certain buildings aren't adequate for the equipment in buildings. The cloud will take care of a lot of that as we move forward, but there are some things that we'll have to do immediately to help out and continue to keep things going until we can make this what does Allison call it? Shift. What do you call it, Allison? The shift in technology. We'll definitely have to make sure that we keep things going as we move forward. And we'll continue innovation. You know, that's what we're here for. Innovate, innovate, innovate. We want to run alongside private sector companies and their IT organizations in what they're doing. We don't want to have a label of being just that government IT organization. We want you to believe and know that the services and consultative services that we provide, we're not having to go out and pay consultants to do the kind of work we're doing. Next slide. That's it for us. And if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate.
Thank you so much. Let's see. We could go back to, okay, so we can take that slide off of the screen. Thank you. I was just, reflecting on how it was during my presidency that we made a decision during one of our retreats, I think it was. I presented an option for us to take a pause during fall and select particular areas where we wanted to do a much deeper dive. So these oversight sessions are so important. I remember Dr. Torregas constantly saying over the years that it was so critical for us to have an opportunity, especially to look at this department before the budget came, because it's a very large department, a very big investment that we have made over the years. And once budget comes, we would look at some of the changes specifically, but not really have an opportunity to think through or discuss the overall direction and how are we positioning this department to find solutions to so many of the issues within government, but most specifically how this whole notion of information and content management has always been such a challenge. And I recall so many times where we would ask, so what else do you need? What else do you need? And it was, the response was always, no, we're doing okay, we're managing. And we were kind of like, navigating the recession and the aftermath of the recession. And we're okay, we're managing. And this committee actually literally was pushing some dollars. Take it, use it.
Wow.
So this is a breath of fresh air because it absolutely, in my opinion, positions this department through, even as I said, the change name TEBS, but also leverages the capacity, right? Leverages the capacity and really positions our county government, as you just said, to think through what private sector is doing and how do we mimic that, because that is what our residents, our constituents expect. Lots of people have come to me and said, well, how come there's not an app, right? Because everybody is they need that instant access. And that also speaks to this notion of equity, because if we really want our constituents to have access to all the resources and all the support and everything, if we make it so cumbersome, then of course, especially in particular communities, there's not going to be that engagement. There's not going to be that access. And I was struck by what you said as well, Director Roper, about this notion of how the pandemic has accelerated everything 7 years. So true. I've been reading a lot about that, and then how we were just forced. But now, how are we going to sustain that shift? Because it's only going to continue then to be compounded in terms of the acceleration. That to me is a super, super exciting. The fiber net, framing that you just described, again, is music to our ears. Dr. Regas can attest that for years we've been saying, this is a huge investment. Let's leverage that into our economic development strategy. We need to do this. This, once again, it's an asset that we have in the county that we have to tie directly to economic development. And so, I am super, super excited about that. I'm going to turn to my colleagues. I just have I guess, 2 questions regarding the 311, that pivot, such quick pivot to respond to the needs of our constituents because of the pandemic. So I would love to just hear briefly, because I do know we have 2 other items, so I want to be mindful of the time, but briefly, how you plan to sustain that. I think that, to me, that brings us to almost a level, playing field, because we know that there's just such pent up desire to make sure that 311 is, again, responding, so I know that what has been done, I think now should become the floor. And then wondering if Monty speaks different languages. I was wondering whether Monty spoke different languages or not, because again, that would be really, really important given our population.
So I will respond to part of that, and then I'm going to turn it over to Shana and Skylar, who worked on Monty and coordinating Monty's voice and all of that. But I would say that we knew that we needed to upgrade, modernize the CBIL system. But more importantly, we needed to better understand what our citizens needed and wanted. And part of that comes with governance. So your question, Mrs. Navarro, around sustaining it, we recommended through our consultative services, we recommended a governance model. Now that governance model is I think they're meeting next week, but it begins to really kind of bring all of the players together in a collaborative fashion and begin to talk about standardization of any type of customer service organization, whether it be HHS or whether it be in another department. Some of the AI technologies, I can remember telling you a long time ago that I was going to implement this chatbot, and you said, "Okay, a chatbot, that's nice." Do you remember that? And that is absolutely what we did. And what a chatbot is it's AI technologies. So we've got to benefit from these nascent technologies. We have the governance piece of it, like strategically. So what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Who's involved? Getting the players. I can remember Councilman Katz saying in one of our meetings, because I listen, I take notes. He said something about getting the right people involved, like getting those frontline folks involved, getting the customer service agents involved. If you look at that governance model that we presented, those individuals are involved, and people will be held accountable. The right hand knows what the left hand is doing, and we begin to standardize across the board and benefit from the technology, but also understand the processes and the re-engineering. We don't want to take as is old processes and put them into technology, and automate them. But let me shut up and let Shana say what you need to say.
Yeah, so just one quick note about Monty. We are continually enhancing the chatbot, and that's the great thing about this low-code technology, is that when content changes, you can easily change it within our tool, so residents can have on-demand, more rapid kind of evolving content. It is available in Spanish. That was one of our requirements right out of the gate, that it had to have that. We are also working with Diane Vu and other partners because the capability is there to automatically translate into many, many other languages. But we want to make sure that our due diligence, as we did with the Spanish translation, is there before we enable that technology. But this bot and other virtual agents will always be enhanced, and we'll always be working with our partners to make sure that it's the right content, but also that it's accessible to everybody that would like to use it.
That's awesome. I oftentimes find myself surprised when there seems to be this perception that especially like immigrant communities or communities of color may not participate or adapt to these uses, and of course you guys know this more than anybody, how the research shows that immigrant communities and communities of color, they adopt technology solutions very quickly. As evident by WhatsApp,
Yes.
where when there was that issue a couple of weeks ago with Facebook and WhatsApp and everything going down, there were economies around the world, that were suffering because it was utilized by so many folks as ways to conduct business in other communities. And that kind of way of communicating happens here too with our residents. And so it is interesting because it is about how you present it. But once it clicks, then, it becomes something that everybody embraces and everybody uses, which is so important given what we've learned throughout this pandemic.
Yes.
Okay, colleagues, any questions? Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I just show you how technical I am. I just put myself off the screen. Ms. Roper,
We see you.
Yeah, we see.
Okay, now you do. Before, I was just listening before, you were talking about all the technology. I couldn't even set my camera so it would be in the right angle. So but Ms. Roper, I have been very impressed with you from the first time we ever met. And I mean that very sincerely. I have said that behind your back. I say that to you. I say that to the world. You are, and the chair has already mentioned this, but you are truly a breath of fresh air at a time when we were in real need of a breath of fresh air from a lot of ways. So I sincerely applaud you and thank you. You've mentioned that you have these secret weapons, and
Yes.
you do,
Oh,
but you also
they're
have a
lovely.
lot of weapons that aren't so secret. And you've done a good job in explaining and helping and getting to the public to let them know that we're here, that we're trying our best to improve, and we have improved in so many ways. I also think it's very important to remember that as important as it is to do what you are doing, we still need to remember that there's some members of our public, though it's starting to shrink, that are not involved in technology. They don't like it, they don't use it, they don't know, whatever, for whatever reason. But we need to make certain that we continue to communicate with them as well. And so I do have one question about the 311. What are the hours for 311 now?
Shana, do you know? I don't. 8 to 5, right?
I believe
Barry
it's
was one, but
Barry is on, so he can confirm, but I do believe that it's 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
It's actually it's actually 7 to 7.
7 to 7, 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
There again, I understand that this is budgetary and we need to consider, but we're living in a 24/7 world, and so we, if possible, we need to look at how we can enhance that so that somebody, on a Saturday afternoon can also contact us. And I understand there was a time the government really was 9 to 5, but those days are long gone. So I think that is something that we should look at, or you should be looking. All of us should be looking at to see where we can get to the next steps. But let me just say once again, I am most impressed and most appreciative that you are getting us to the spot where we need to be. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Feetson.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. Thank you for the update. Obviously, there's a lot that's been going on. There was already changes in the works, and then the pandemic happened, and those changes were needed the day before or the week before, or the year before you were able to start working on them. And I just appreciate the progress that's been made. There's certainly a lot more work that needs to be done. We're not near where we ought to be able to provide residents with the type of responsive government that we want, but we're moving in that direction. I just really appreciate all the efforts that you have taken. It can be a frustrating dynamic with technology, certainly, but and it's a it's a cruise ship, in terms of the size of county government and all the different departments and interfaces that we have with residents. So it's definitely not an easy task that you've taken on, but I appreciate the fact that you've really made a commitment to deliver on this, and you're moving in that direction as we move forward. And today's presentation was a really good indication of some of the progress that you've made. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to my team. I don't do any of this alone. Thanks to the team.
No, this is definitely an amazing team. And I want to also echo that. I mean, I think that when we began conversations with you, Director Roper, about your goals and your approach, we were very excited. Actually, I had those conversations with the executive before, right after he was elected, about some of the opportunities that we had to shift, to realign, to position particular parts of the government to, in some ways, I think, keep up with what was happening in our community, especially with us being leaders in the life science and the biotech space and everything of that sort, and with so many folks who have ties to other major countries who are, also, leading in that space, the need for us to think through how we could leverage some of these investments to then find ways to even attract, companies, or to set the stage so companies would look at us. I mean, that tie to economic development is so real. And we definitely have a lot of elements to leverage that. And so it was very interesting because, when you were brought on board and you started talking about what you wanted to do, I was like, I think that this is going to go somewhere. And lo and behold, here you all are, having been put through this extraordinary year of acceleration.
Yes.
Definitely stepped up. And I'll say to you, Councilmember Katz, I consider myself to be somewhat literate in technology, but there is nothing to make me feel super humbled and to sit down with my two daughters as they try to explain to me, or they just get on that MacBook and they're just doing all this kind of stuff. Look, Mom, this is what you have to do. And I'm like, no, I need to write it down. Step number 1, step number 2. Or I'll say to them, or you guys can just do it for me because you do owe me a lot. I gave birth to you and I raised you. And they'll say, okay, Mom, but you know what? You should make an effort to at least learn some of it. So it's an interesting dynamic and interaction with these young people, and the younger ones are even worse in that sense.
Yes.
So it's incredible to try to keep up with them, but it's pretty exciting. All right, anything else, Dr. Turgas, that we think we have missed so we can proceed to the
No,
next
I think
item?
you've covered it all, and I think Ms. Rober has given you a great overview, but also prepared you for what's to come. I think we really need to continue to make the kinds of investments that GEO has led with for the next few years, because the threats are increasing, and it's just amazing. Just stop and think. We've never had a cyber attack bring us down. Don't say anything. And it doesn't happen magically. It happens because of hard work. And we continue to see that. If I can, I'd like to introduce the next topic, just very
please.
briefly,
Thank you.
and then turn it over to Gail and to all the participants. So the cable plan is something that the GEO committee reviews and endorses every year. It comes from franchise fees of the cable companies and other associated fees for telecommunications. When I first started working on the cable plan, it was up about $30 million. It's now down to about 23 million. It's continued to decline. So long-term strategic question, what happens if those kinds of fees continue to decline as they do? But today, we're here to talk about 3 different parts of the cable plan. One is the kind of investment that it provides to about 7 different organizations that have come together, calling themselves the Alliance, Cable Montgomery Alliance. It's from different agencies, different departments, but they work together, and they're funded through the cable plan, and they're able to work together to do amazing things. And you will hear some of those things. In fact, from a budget perspective, you authorize the inclusion of a coordinator to help this alliance kind of move things around. The second thing is an organization that does incredible things, MCM. And I wanted to make sure that the committee remembers that MCM is an organization, it's a 501c3. It's not part of government. And yet the Montgomery County government provides robust funding for MCM. Nanette Hobson leads that organization. And from what I see on the list, many of the board members of the MCM are here as well to provide insight as well. And then the third one is a large portion of the $23 million does go to specific operational things that enables TEBS to provide us connectivity around the county. And you heard FiberNet 3 and how critical it is as a resource that's beginning to be utilized more and more. So we're going to hear from Joe Webster, who for several years now has been our chief broadband officer, the kind of vision behind how do we connect things to one another. So those are the 3 things I want to make sure there's enough time for the committee to hear from and to ask questions about. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to I guess, Gail, to start us off.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah,
I will.
before we do that, I do want to welcome everybody. I do see some familiar faces here, board members from MCM, Mayor Jeffrey Slavin and Councilmember Valerie Irvin. Welcome. But a lot of really friendly faces. Of course, Mr. Brendan Ricks, Mr. Lipsky. Of course, we have Ms. Susan Kennedy here as well. Mr. Hudson, Ms. Nanette Hobson, who has been leading the charge there, and CM has done extraordinary work. Mr. Webster was already here. Mr. Derek Kenny. Just welcome everybody to these conversations. And just wanted to reiterate that we made a decision in 2019 to just, select particular areas of county government and in particular programs to go a little bit deeper in the fall when we're not in the middle of budget, just running around, but just kind of like take a deep breath and listen to some of the horizon issues and some of the strategic thinking around how we can best leverage, of course, county dollars, but also the programming and or the initiatives. And this particular area is so important, as we were just discussing, given everything that has happened during the pandemic. We all now have even a deeper appreciation for communication, for how we engage the public, for how we serve our public. And so all of you here as a collection have played an important role. I sing this down to Keating as well, have played an important role in ensuring that that communication, that information went out. And in no small measure, this saved lives. This saved lives. Having access to the information in real time and accurate information, especially during the first months of the pandemic, was pivotal in saving lives. So I just want to, before everybody gets started, I just want to thank all of you for playing a role in making sure that we could adapt quickly to inform all 1.1 million residents to the resources, the testing, then the vaccination, et cetera, in order to save lives. So, Director Roper.
I'm going to turn it over to Joe Webster. I think that going forward, there are some big decisions that have to be made around the monetization of FiberNet. So how can we best utilize the FiberNet infrastructure for economic development? I think that we're going to have to really kind of build a proposal for the council so that we can begin to have dialogue around that. I think that's the question that has never really been vetted. So I just wanted to say that we'll be bringing that forward. So after talking with Dr. Torregas on how we might address those issues, and then how we continue to deal with the loss of funding towards FiberNet. And so how do we use operational dollars? How do we address those issues? And with that, I'll turn it over to our Chief Broadband Officer, Joe Webster.
Thank you, Director Roper. Good morning, everyone. I have a few slides I'll go through, and then we'll answer any questions you may have. Next slide, please. So regarding digital equity, there's really three legs to the digital equities stool that we talk about a lot in TEBS. The question of access to the internet. So we have a few locations. As a result of our rural broadband study, we know there are about 100 locations in the ag reserve that just cannot get internet access today. And we're working on some innovative strategies to try to make sure they can get internet access. Then there's the question of digital literacy. Do people feel comfortable utilizing the internet? Do they know the resources that are out there? Are they safe doing that? We're addressing that as well through Ultra Montgomery, Senior Planet Montgomery, Senior Planet IT training programs, and affordability is a big issue. So we're fortunate in most of Montgomery County where we have 2 residential franchise cable operators, in some areas 3, and those operators provide broadband internet access, but it's not affordable for all of our residents. So affordability is a big issue in terms of digital equity in Montgomery County. There's also a question of devices and making sure everyone has a good digital device, whether it's a laptop or a tablet or some other device. It's very hard to do certain things on a smartphone, as we all know. So in late 2020, September 2020, we launched our Digital Equity Internet Access Service, which we call MocoNet. We developed MocoNet initially in conjunction with the folks who developed Main Street Apartments in downtown Rockville, which was a new 70-unit apartment building that's targeting special needs adults and low-income adults. So they were near the end of construction of that building. We connected it to our fiber optic network and launched MocoNet. We also provide, through partners, we had very influential and beneficial equipment manufacturing partners that helped us with Main Street Apartments, Cisco and Plume being two of those key partners. So we also provide whole home managed Wi-Fi service through the Plume Wi-Fi device and their service. This also provides a level of cybersecurity, which I've actually benefited from at home. If somehow you get an email and you click on something, I received an automated warning from Plume that, don't go there. This is not a safe website. So that's all built into our MocoNet service. Next slide, please. So we're accelerating MocoNet. We are very proud of the progress we've made. So just recently this month, we've actually doubled the bandwidth. So for all of our MocoNet customers, the low income and special needs residents that receive the service, we double the bandwidth from symmetrical 50 megabits per second download and upload to 100 megabits per second download and upload. And that is really strong bandwidth. It's a very reliable service. So you can have a household now, 4, 5, 6 people at home, living at home, working at home, learning at home, enjoying entertainment services at home with plenty of bandwidth. So there's no caching and delays. With some of the other affordable internet services that are provided by our commercial partners, they're typically, from a cable television perspective, very good on the download speed, but sometimes the upload speed is quite constrained, and that has caused a lot of issues with the pandemic and people doing live streaming and learning from home and working from home. We will also expanded MocoNet, so next month we'll be launching MocoNet in Upton 2 in downtown Rockville, which is an HOC affiliated property with very affordable senior housing units. So that'll be our second site to receive MocoNet service. And throughout November and December, as residents move in, they'll have access to MocoNet. Next slide, please. And the future is very bright for MocoNet. We have talked to all of our affordable housing partners in the county, HOC being one of the primary ones, Victory Housing, Montgomery Housing Partners, Arlington Housing Corporation, and others. And the good news is there's an extremely high level of interest and demand for MocoNet service. We've developed an inventory or backlog, depending upon how you want to describe it, of 11,000 affordable housing units in the county through these affordable housing partners that have expressed a very strong interest in receiving MocoNet service. So we have 2 or 3 other properties that are in development now that we plan to launch over the coming 12 to 18 months, and a huge list of additional properties that would love to receive it. Our kind of gating factor there is funding. Next slide, please. Now transition to FiberNet 3. Gail mentioned FiberNet. It's an asset that we're very lucky to have, over 650 route miles of fiber optic network throughout much of the county. It has served the county very, very well. We connect all county government offices, police, fire, public safety, Montgomery College, Montgomery County Public Schools, our libraries, you name it. It's all connected to FiberNet. And we embarked on an upgrade from the 2nd generation of FiberNet, which has been around for about 15 years and has served the county very well, to what we call FiberNet 3, the 3rd generation of FiberNet. Key to that was upgrading the speed of the backbone network. It was previously 10 gigabits per second. We have completed the upgrade of the backbone to 100 gigabits per second. So it's a 10-fold increase in the bandwidth capacity of the core FiberNet network. And we're also cutting over 600 sites to FiberNet 3. And as of today, we're over 78% complete in converting sites from FiberNet 2 to FiberNet 3 throughout the county. And we're on schedule to have that all completed by the end of this calendar year. Next slide, please. And with regard to MCPS, back in April, during the pandemic, MCPS started to bring students back to school in a hybrid fashion. And about 50% of the students and their parents decided that their children would be in the classroom. About 50% were choosing to stay at home at that point in time. And MCPS was bringing back a few grades at a time, right around spring break. And when they brought back the initial grades, I believe was some lower grades, they realized they had a huge bandwidth challenge. So students in the classroom were using their digital devices, laptops, and so forth, and they all were on video streaming from their device. The teachers connected to a smart board, video, and all the students at home were video streaming as well. This created a tremendous spike in their bandwidth needs, and we were able to work with MCPS and pull forward their planned migration to FiberNet 3 from what was a 90-day summer project, June, July, and August, which is what they had requested, so it would not impact their school operations. We pulled that forward. We accomplished converting all 220 plus schools to FiberNet 3 in an 11-day period, included 2 weekends with a lot of 18 and 20-hour days. But fortunately, it worked out very well. MCPS was able to benefit from that tenfold increase of bandwidth, and they did not experience any problems. Other school systems in Maryland did have some serious problems with bandwidth at the same time for similar reasons, and some were unfortunately not able to adjust and adapt as quickly as we were fortunately able to do. Next slide, please. So Pete Savanini, who's the Associate Superintendent of Technology and Innovation, MCPS, the whole MCPS IT organization and organization in general, they were great to work with. They worked hand in hand with us as we converted those sites over during those very long hours, and they've been very appreciative of the success of that conversion. Next slide, please. So another very important aspect of FiberNet 3 that Gail mentioned is our connectivity to Ashburn, Virginia. So as I'm sure all of you know, Ashburn is really the internet capital of the world, 80 to 100 commercial data centers there, just across the Potomac River. And we are expanding actually expanding FiberNet through 2 different diverse fiber optic routes to interconnect with a Tier 4 data center in Ashburn, an Equinix data center. Data centers are rated on a scale of 4, Tier 1, 2, 3, and 4, with Tier 4 being the most reliable, redundant, secure, safe environment that is possible. Our data center is probably a Tier 1, maybe slightly less at COB. It's 50 years old and has some challenges. So having access to a Tier 4 data center will greatly improve the reliability and survivability of our applications and equipment and data that we store there. It will also provide us with faster and much more cost-effective internet service. So for county government offices, for all the agencies we serve, and importantly for our digital equity efforts, our cost for internet bandwidth will be reduced by 75 to 80% compared to what it costs us now. We'll also have access to all the cloud service providers. We're actually close to 2,000 cloud service and internet service providers available through Equinix in Ashburn, Virginia. So Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, Amazon Web Services, Oracle, Office 365, etc. They're all available there, and literally through a portal, we can cross-connect to them within the matter of a few minutes, half an hour to an hour, have connectivity to these cloud service providers. We will have very large bandwidth capabilities there. So initially, the 100 gigabit backbone will be connected there. We'll have the ability to increase that by 48-fold over time. So plenty of bandwidth, really virtually unlimited bandwidth capabilities with that interconnectivity to Ashburn. And last but not least, this will greatly enhance our disaster recovery and business continuity capabilities. So we are going to be co-locating, have a little bit of space in this Equinix data center. So we will be able to locate servers and storage equipment there, as well as network routing and firewall equipment. And those servers and that storage equipment will give us the ability to recover key applications much more quickly. It will also greatly enhance our cybersecurity capabilities, because we'll be able to store data in a secure environment there, and also something that's called immutable data, which means uneditable data. And that'll be a layer of protection against ransomware attacks that today is much more difficult to achieve. Next slide, please. With this, I'm going to turn it over to Derek Kenney, the voice of What's Happening MoCo.
All right. Well, good morning. Thank you, Joe. The What's Happening MoCo podcast highlights events and issues and happenings in Montgomery County, with the emphasis on sharing county government resources and information. And during a time last March where the county's residents were looking for information, we presented yet another way to hear from over 37 representatives from 22 county or state organizations. We produce this podcast in-house. We distribute it via traditional podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and others. You can even ask Alexa to play the podcast, and she'll play it for you. And this approach that we've developed is also replicable, so we can produce podcasts for other county departments or agencies that seek to have their own podcasts. Another notable effort, speaking of digital equity and reaching out and empowering residents with affordable internet, the Office of Broadband Programs was very instrumental in organizing and facilitating Maryland Digital Inclusion Education Summit. The summit's goal was to gain input from Maryland organizations and residents to help shape the use of $4 million that was allocated to the creation of a new division. The division's focus is on bridging the digital divide and supporting internet adoption statewide. So it's a very important initiative that OBP helped to coordinate and organize. And lastly, I think as we talk about some of the residents that may not be as technically inclined, our residents 50 plus, which many of us are getting closer to, may need additional help. And over the course of the last several years, OBP through Ultra Montgomery has been very instrumental with Senior Plan Montgomery. But with the advent of COVID-19, we introduced Montgomery Connects, which was a program that included a collaborative effort with the Department of Recreation's COVID Corps. This COVID Corps helped to provide tech support and tools to help older residents adjust the increased dependency on technology due to the COVID-19 crisis. So seniors were able to benefit from over 400 hours of technical support in 12 different languages. Many of the languages provided, or much of the supports provided, was in Spanish and Mandarin. And the program was pretty successful, as evident by the results of the survey, in which 96% of respondents reported that the program helped them, and over 89% of the respondents reported that their comfort with technology has improved. So those are a few of the things that OBP has been doing. And now we'll hand it over to Barry Hudson, who's the co-chair of the Connect Montgomery Alliance, and he'll speak a bit more about what the Alliance has been up to.
Thank you. I want to just start off by saying one of the key words that you'll hear throughout this presentation and throughout the rest of it is the whole word of collaboration. One of the things that certainly hit us with COVID was we were, if we did have silos, forced to break them down and work together. And in this particular case, the Alliance has worked together very effectively over the last year plus to try to make sure that we collaborate and connect information to the residents of Montgomery County through our collective communication channels. Next slide. So one of the big things that we were doing over the last year or so has been, supporting the COVID information piece. So whether it was putting information out on all the channels that are part of our Alliance, or whether it was putting information out on the COVID Montgomery social media aspects, we've been getting information out and using those channels, and we've had to work together in this particular case, which I think will be a model for the future, to make sure that all our messages were coordinated and the information that was going out through all of the channels, as well as on social media and the website, were all together. One of the things that has happened, and we've noticed over the last year, has been a growth in our social media. So our Facebook pages have more than 3,500 followers and 3,300 likes. Twitter has grown, and we now have 2,000 visitors per month with about 12,000 impressions. And we started an Instagram account. That's the beginning. And that has gained, at this point, almost 500 followers. And we're starting to pick up that pace, and it continues to grow. And that's because, we're working together and trying to get that content out there. Obviously, things such as equipment modernization, simulcasting, marketing outreach for information, as well as hybrid meetings. From the very beginning of the pandemic, we were working together, not just as cable operators, but also working very closely with TEBS in setting up these meetings. And the hybrid meetings, we just finished a set of 5 budget forums using the hybrid format, with TEBS certainly playing a significant role in having that happen. But we couldn't have that happen without the channels, without the alliance, and without TEBS, so all of us working together to make sure we get that out. And that model, I think, will serve us very well going forward. Our ability to produce meetings where people can be there in person, as well as sit at home, ask questions at home, and ask questions while they're there. So that's worked out quite well. Obviously, digital equity's already been talked about. Our focus on, excuse me, racial equity and social justice. One of the ways that we did this as an alliance was we created some materials earlier this year that were passed out at vaccination sites and test sites that provided information on a number of COVID pieces, and they were done in Spanish and in English. One side was Spanish, one side was English, because we want to make sure that when we pass this information out, it was effective. And even as we were doing this last set of hybrid meetings, just as an example, residents who were tuning in virtually were able to pick from 6 languages and actually have it translated at the bottom of their screen. So that is another way of us kind of making that known. And just yesterday, we had a really long conversation, because we'll be doing a Spanish only budget meeting. And during that meeting, we want to make sure that it is totally culturally competent. So we're doing all the things that we can to make sure that we make these meetings interactive, effective, and address the needs of the communities that we're trying to connect with. Obviously, the messaging around being a green county and food security was one of the other ways that food insecurity is one of the things that we focused on as well during COVID. Next slide, please. One of the big things in the dollars that have been allocated to the Alliance, and we asked for this, was the ability to have an operations coordinator. And I want to thank Susan Kennedy for her tremendous work in helping us put together the job description, which you're seeing here, some of the things that we're looking for that individual. That particular individual will help the Alliance on a daily basis continue to coordinate its activities and make sure we're all on the same page. What we're trying to do is make sure, from a messaging perspective, there will be key things that are either coming out of the legislative branch, out of the executive branch, that there's information that does need to get out to the community. And we want to make sure that we have those messages coordinated so that we can coordinate with PIOs and all the other groups to make sure that the information goes out, and we get those messages out, not just through the channels, but through social media and the other aspects of it. This individual will help us with that coordination, working with not only the channels and the members of the Alliance, but also working with outside vendors and others who are helping us put together our marketing strategies and the like. We're really excited about this individual joining us. I know I am, because I've been chairing these meetings that we have monthly, and I know my colleagues have joined us. They're all here. We meet once a month. We have a robust agenda where we go through all the items that are important to the Alliance of us getting information out. They're here for support, and they have been just an incredible group to work with over the last 5 or 6 months. I don't know how I ended up chairing these meetings. I think I was standing still and everybody took a step back. But it has actually been a wonderful experience getting to know these individuals who are tremendously committed to getting information out to the residents of Montgomery County. I will now turn it over to one of the members of our Alliance, Nanette Hobson, with Montgomery Community Cable.
Thank you, Barry. And you have been a wonderful leader of the organization. We're really very happy to have you. And I know that my colleagues share in that praise. I'm very grateful to have an opportunity to talk to you about Montgomery Community Media and to have a chance to tell you some of the good work that we've been up to the last year. And mostly this is a story about an evolution, though, and how Montgomery Community Media quickly adapted to the situation of COVID and having to be virtual all the time. I'm joined today, happily, by some members of our board who have helped us and supported us to get us to this place. That includes our president, Jeffrey Slavin, our vice president, Vernon Ricks, and executive committee members, Valerie Irvin and Juanita Farmer. I have to share with you, to make this quick, a very short video that we use for marketing our organization that I think will push the explanation of who we are along. So let's start there.
Hello, I'm Nanette Hobson, CEO of Montgomery Community Media, your nonprofit resource for local news, information, and programming for and about Montgomery County. It's hard to keep up with the information you need to navigate these unprecedented times. Through it all, MCM is there for you with reliable, trustworthy news and information about your communities, schools, businesses, and government. Our Emmy award-winning team of journalists has been working virtually and safely every day, producing the vital local news you need to be informed and keep your family safe.
Every story, regardless of the language.
We tell amazing, impactful, important stories, and we're not done.
The value of this work is evident in the explosive growth of our audiences, over 200% this year over last. Our social media platforms, daily email newsletters, and mobile-friendly mymcmedia.org website reach people with news they care about in every corner of our county. We also produce stories in Spanish.
Ponerte en los zapatos de la gente, oye, duele. Y aquí ha venido gente, personas, mujeres con niños tiernos a pedir comida. Eso me parte el alma.
Teach media classes virtually. And help other nonprofits use media to connect people in need with the resources that can help. We invite you to sign up for our e-newsletters at mymcmedia.org today and support MCM by telling your friends and neighbors about this valuable resource in our community. Join us and add your voice to platforms that are built on stories for and about you. Thank you, and please be well and stay safe.
So like all of the agencies here today, the last year has been extraordinary for us as well. But we have continued to do the work that we do, including the reporting, the programming, teaching our classes, and also producing events for other nonprofits as they have struggled to connect with their constituencies. We've done many a gala, a forum, a meeting for other nonprofits and help them to stay connected. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have for us at this time.
All right. Let's see, colleagues. I think that we are all so pleased with what we have heard.
Thank you.
Yes, and
thank you.
Yeah, I do believe that, again, when we take a step back to reflect on everything we have gone through, the way that everybody has completely adapted, shifted, with no manual. I keep saying that none of us had a manual when all of this started. But I think in many ways we were very fortunate because we had already made investments and we have built capacities that we could then build upon. And to me, that is one of the great stories of Montgomery County. I remember when Councilmember Irvin was a member of this committee. I'm sure she has stories about how we kept pushing in incremental ways to build capacity for all of these particular types of assets in our county. And, you know, it was clear, I mean, when we were hit with the pandemic, that we could quickly turn to many of you, many of our, you know, nonprofit organizations, many of our community partners, et cetera, and everybody just stepped up. To me, the real trick is going to be keeping those lessons front and center so that we can build upon those. If not, then we're going to definitely fall behind again. So that is something that I hope we all are very mindful, is how do we then keep the momentum going and build on what we have done thus far, because things are not going to go back to the way they were before. And I think in many ways our constituents are already have gotten used to this level of information, sharing, engagement, et cetera. And it's the right thing, and it's what's going to give us the results that we need. So yeah, I don't have a lot of other questions or anything like that. I don't know, Dr. Torregas, anything specific that we have missed?
No, not for me. Again, it was to give you an opportunity to hear all the amazing work that's going on in the departments. I do see some hands raised, but I know that you're pressed for time.
The chair.
Yes, well, I just want to say that a lot of the success of our organization, Madam Chair, is because of your incredible leadership and involvement and personal involvement with the operation of MCM, and I'm sure that is a major factor in the explosive growth of what we've been doing. And it's really so important in a democracy that the correct information is received by citizens so that they can get involved and form opinions and give input on public policy decisions, especially that your committee and the council's making. So, and also our staff, we have an incredible staff led by Nanette Hobson. And now I will turn it over to my distinguished colleague, Councilmember Valerie Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor Slavin. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you, Madam Chair, for the incredible work that you do every single day on the council for now 3 terms. And I wanted to also give my regards to Councilmember Friedson and Councilmember Katz for the extraordinary work that they do alongside you, Madam Chair, in this very important committee. And I remember years ago hearing the struggles at MCM, and I am so proud to be serving on this board alongside many of my friends and colleagues, but particularly want to point out the hard work that Nanette Hobson has done to put this organization in the trajectory that we see ourselves in right now. I couldn't be more proud to serve. When I got off the council, I always said, I need to find something to do that I can go deep into and that I really, really want to do for the citizens of this county. Without MCM throughout the last year and a half, I think people would be struggling to find out what's going on around them. And I think that what Nanette has been able to do is to double down and go deep. And so we are able to tell our stories. We're able to share very important, hard news. And because here locally, as you all know, as elected officials, it's very hard to find a place to get local news. And MCM does that. We've lost our newspapers, our local newspapers, and so we're dependent upon, the Washington Post and other national news, which they do not do the job that our citizens need for us to do. And so I'm very proud to serve on this board, and Nanette Hobson has just done an extraordinary job leading us through the pandemic.
Well, I am humbled by the praise, but I will say that it's our award-winning team that does the hard work. And even during a pandemic, they continue to be nominated for awards both locally and nationally, and including 2 Emmys, 3 nominations. We also got a Society of Professional Journalists Award for the first time. Got several NATOAs. I just couldn't be more thrilled with the quality of work that this team does every single day. And they don't do it to win awards. They do it because they're committed to telling stories. And a wise council member and a board member said to me recently that that's the business that we're in. We're in the business of telling stories. We tell stories about the county, and we also facilitate the stories that residents want to tell about themselves and share with each other. And there is no greater mission, I don't think, than that. So I am very proud and pleased to work with this board and to work with our staff at MCM.
Thank you for that. I couldn't agree more. And I think that that really goes to all the different partners and different organizations that are gathered here today. The ability to, again, just shift and realign and retool, and more importantly, to tell stories that reflect the lives of our community members, of our extraordinary county. It's really a great thing to see, and it's the right thing to do. So I think all of you have stepped up to fulfill the mission, and that is why the story of what has happened with the pandemic and where we are in terms of our vaccination rates, things like that. That's why we are leading the nation. Everybody here has played a role, a significant role in getting us to that point. And we should, I feel like, oftentimes the discourse that is out there tends to just focus on the negative all the time, that it becomes really this echo chamber, when in reality, if you take a step back, you see that the intention of so many who are gathered here and so many other county employees and community partners, et cetera, that intention of helping your neighbor really has yielded extraordinary results. And so we should definitely celebrate that and definitely continue to work in that spirit, because it's going to take a lot more going forward for this post-COVID-19 recovery. And again, we won't be the same. So thank you, everybody, for everything that you do, those that do it on a volunteer basis, those that work for the county and have stepped up in extraordinary ways. We really do appreciate it. And we look forward to the next briefing and see what comes our way during budget time as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone. So now we're going to move on to our next item, which is a bill. This is expedited bill 33-21, Personnel, Employees Retirement System, Group E amendments. Let's see, I see Mr. Drummer here. And this basically was sponsored by lead sponsor council president at the request of the county executive. It was introduced on July 27th, 2021, and a public hearing on the bill was held on September 14th, 2021. The bill would move resident supervisors working in DOCR from Group J of the retirement plan to Group E. This would make them eligible for the Deferred Retirement Option Plan, also known as the DROP, currently available for sworn deputy sheriffs and uniformed correctional officers. The bill will also clarify the application of credited service for employees who move from the GRIP to Group E. So that is the general description of the bill. Welcome everyone that is here today for this bill. Let me turn it over to Mr. Drummer to walk us through the packet, decision points, and introduce those who are here for the bill.
Okay, good morning. That was a tough act to follow. We don't have a video. We don't even have a PowerPoint.
Make sure you bring a video next time.
Yeah.
A TikTok at least, something.
Maybe a Laurel and Hardy video or something like that. This bill is, as you said, is sponsored by the council president at the request of the executive. It is part of a collective bargaining agreement that was negotiated between the executive and McGeo, not this past year, but the year before, in 2020. It came to the council as part of the collective bargaining agreement back in April 1st of 2020. And along with everything that would increase the cost to the county and increase benefits and wages, was rejected by the council at the beginning of the pandemic, as I know you remember, in our same services budget. This April, the executive sent over an agreement with McGeo, which you've already approved. And this is a lost piece, I guess you could say. It did not come over in April, as the law requires. It came over in June, and it's late. Let me just explain what the bill does. As you know, we have a deferred retirement option plan, where it started with, I believe, with the fire department for uniformed firefighters and EMTs. It was then authorized for police officers, uniformed police officers. And in 2015, McGeo negotiated a drop, a very similar drop for deputy sheriffs and uniformed corrections officers. The drop is a benefit for employees that allows somebody who has reached full retirement, and all of these employees are in the defined benefit plan. So if you reach full retirement, you can voluntarily go into what we call the drop, and your pension is, you start receiving your pension, but not directly. It goes to a separate account, and the money in the account can be invested similar to a 401k or a deferred comp plan by the employee, but it sits there in that account while you continue working for up to 3 years. You don't have to work for 3 years, but you can't work more than 3 years. And when you finally, and you receive your normal salary, you no longer continue paying into the retirement plan, and you receive your salary. When you leave, you're entitled to take the money in the account. So essentially, you're getting your pension up to 3 years early. The purpose of that, well, one is it to benefit for employees. Two, it's intended to keep employees working longer than past their normal retirement date. And also allows management to do some succession planning for knowing when people are going to leave, although you don't really know exactly when they're going to leave. You know they're going to leave within 3 years, but it could be sooner. This particular bill would add, I believe it's approximately 20 employees who work for the Department of Corrections into a group, I think it's Group E, where they're currently in Group J. The difference between Group J and Group E, the pension is the same except for eligibility into the drop. Would move these employees into the drop, or into Group E, which would make them eligible for the drop. There is an actuarial report. The employees are resident supervisors. Unlike the uniformed corrections officers, although they work with the inmates, they don't work with them in the facility. They work with them either in halfway homes on their way. I'm not sure that's the right term, might be. On their way out, when people who are in, partial release. They work with the same people, but not in the facility. So this would move them into the same group. The actuarial report that was done for this would indicates that the county contribution, because this does cost the county money because it's a benefit to the employees, is, where is that number? The actuarial, I'm looking at the staff report. The actuarial report, yeah, the total accrued pension liability for these 20 employees is $167,760, or $88,388 per employee, if 20 is the correct number. That's the number from the fiscal impact statement. And that's what the bill would do. The issues are, one, should the council act on this bill now, even though it was late? And I will say that the law, the collective bargaining law required that this be sent over, the legislation, the actuarial report, and the provision to the council on April 1st. The reason for getting everything all at once is because the council adopts the annual budget, knowing what all the increases or in benefits and wages are for all the employees at one time, and doesn't come piecemeal after the council has passed the budget. That's what happened here. As far as that, doesn't mean the council can't act on it. The council certainly can. It's legislation that was introduced, and you certainly have the authority to go ahead and enact it now. I've talked about the rationale for adding resident supervisors. The argument is that their work is similar to uniform corrections officers because they deal with the same inmates. They also deal with inmates. And that they have similar training and requirements. Okay. The options really for the council are, I see, threefold. Assuming you're not going to amend, I don't see amendments to the drop plan itself, just for 20 employees. They're either in the same drop or they're not. You could do that, but I think the reasonable alternative is either to approve it as it's sent over, or to not act on the bill now and defer it until next year, along with the inevitable collective bargaining agreement we're going to get from McGeo, that's going to come over from the executive next April, or to enact it, but give it a delayed effective date for FY 2023 because you've already set the budget for 22.
Okay.
I will say that it will not require an additional, I don't believe the actuary said it will require an additional contribution this year. You've already made the contribution to the retirement plan. It's something that will come up in the future. So that's the bill. Those are the options. And we've got here Linda Herman from the retirement plan, who can explain the drop and how it would work. Corey Orlowski from OMB to explain the numbers if you have questions about that. Jennifer Harling is here from the Office of Labor Relations, can talk about the collective bargaining process and what happened here. And we do have Gina Wren from McGeo, president of McGeo, and Lisa Blackwell Brown, also from McGeo, to discuss or respond to questions you may have about this revision.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Drummer. A couple of comments I will make before I turn to my colleagues to see what questions they have regarding the bill. I think it's important to remind, just for the record, that when we became aware that we had a major pandemic in front of us, everything had to be shifted immediately. And one of the things that we decided, because we had no idea what the economic impact was going to be, how devastating or not it was going to be, was to adopt a same services budget. Obviously, that had an impact on our decision regarding collective bargaining agreements, because everything was going to be funded according to the levels that we had funded the year before. And this was just to be proactive in mitigating what it was inevitable was going to become a major fiscal impact to the county. Of course, we had a different administration back then as well. And there was just a lot of different issues hitting us. And so one of the things we did say was that once we would have a sense of the fiscal impact to the county and to our economy, that we would revisit certain things. And I felt that that was an important approach, because obviously this was unprecedented. We've been fortunate that we were able to receive relief dollars, whether it was through the CARES Act or ARPA, to mitigate the impact out there in the community. But nonetheless, we're still very mindful of what can happen. We're not necessarily out of the woods completely, even if the state has says that they have received extraordinary surplus. A lot of this is, directly connected to these federal funds. So these are things that are not necessarily going to go forward. So I just wanted to put that out there as an observation as to why we are here at this moment in time. And I feel comfortable that, it was a promise that I know I made, that we would come back and revisit certain things. And if the conditions were what they were and they were much better, that we would address those issues at that time. So I just wanted to point that out, and that, I think in terms of the fiscal impact, it is not so significant that would cause, pause. It was bargained. And from my perspective, I think that we need to honor that, and we need to move forward and just adopt the bill as is. But that's just my observation, and I just wanted to say that because it's important to remember what happened in 2020, and how, in some ways, we're still trying to navigate and figure out what's coming our way. So that is important. It was unusual. It's been an unusual time. We've had to shift from and deviate from certain schedules and things like that. But I think everybody has stepped up and done what they had to do in order to get us to the point that we are today. Okay, let's see. Councilor McCants.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and your observations are within my memory as well. That's exactly how we got here. And it wasn't that we actually wanted to do what we did, but we were so afraid of the unknown. And I think that was the prudent thing to do at that time. However, I'm in agreement with you. I believe that we should be doing this, and quite candidly, I think we should do this now. The fact that it was sent late, and I appreciate that, we would be actually, I guess, harming the people that we're trying to help if we delayed it, and that's not fair. So, I'm in favor of doing this and doing it now. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Feetson.
Well, it seems as there are already two votes. I had a few questions before making my decision. I appreciate everything that colleagues have said, and I do think to the point that this is a fairly, in the scheme of the county's fiscal obligations, a relatively insignificant, obligation, although it is an annualized obligation. I respect and appreciate that. I just have a few questions, if that's okay, even though I think, the vote has already been indicated here. Just curious why this group of employees was excluded. I mean, the idea here is to include 20 employees, a relatively small group of employees. They're not in the drop program now, not eligible for this category of employee. What's the reasoning behind that? I'm not sure who the most appropriate.
I could let me fill that, because I'm probably the one that's.
Sure. You have a lot of institutional knowledge on the issue.
No, well, that's what I was going to say. I probably have the most knowledge on that very question. The fact is, the county dug in their heels. When we initially negotiated a drop, we wanted a more expansive drop program, not only to include the resident supervisors, but all civilians that work within the county and our correctional facilities, because we believe they're exposed to same level of risk. And we had to, cut a deal, if you will, at the time to carve out the resident supervisors as well as the civilian employees for the greater good and get the correctional officers, uniformed correctional officers. But there was no logic to it then. There isn't any logic to it now. But it's one of those situations where employers tend to dig in their heels for no apparent reason. And that's the brutal truth of the history here. Now, the county may give you a different answer, but I was at the bargaining.
Well, I have a follow-up question to that, and I want to turn to Ms. Harling. But is the intention here to come back for the civilian employees as well, and include in this?
Let me answer it with some brief background. Okay, if you look at where we're hemorrhaging employees, Public safety is certainly one of the areas. And we're faced with that in transit as well, but we've put together a strategy to hopefully stop the bleeding there that will be coming before you soon. But so you know, Fairfax County offers a drop program for all employees. They don't differentiate. And the wisdom there is because they want to, in a very competitive market, they want to be able to maintain the expertise and continuity of services and keep people on board and have the luxury of time to do a deeper recruitment and assessment process of replacement candidates. So there's no disruption in the services. That, quite frankly, was the whole theory behind drop to begin with in public safety. That's more true today than ever before. To answer your question specifically, sure, we're going to go back to the bargaining table and try to expand it to additional public safety personnel. We'll either be successful or we won't. But in this instance, there's no definitive difference between the PRC correctional staff, and I do want to correct something for the record. Mr. Drummer said they do not oversee folks in a facility. They very much do. If you visited the PR center, that is a secure correctional facility. The only difference is there's no bars, and the inmates leave. Part of the condition of being there is they go on to a job, but they come back. But we have the same challenges and threats and all those sorts of things at the PRC that we have in the other two facilities. The other thing is, at PRC, our resident supervisors had to maintain the same certifications as a uniformed correctional officer. So there was never any logic behind excluding them. Again, it was just a line drawn in the sand.
Got it. Thank you, Miss.
That might be more than what you asked for, but I wanted to.
But I appreciate it. I appreciate the institutional background. Ms. Harlan, anything to add to that?
Not really. My understanding is simply that the employer's mindset on this issue changed and evolved as the position and the duties required and the certifications required also evolved. So that as time went on, it became clear that this position was more aligned with the correctional officer position, and so we needed to address this inequity.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like that's a different explanation, but I appreciate the different perspective. Either the role changed or the roles didn't change. There was a negotiation, and the people negotiating maybe changed. But anyway, I don't want to get too caught up in that. I think it would be helpful subsequent to this just to have staff provide an analysis of what the additional resident employee costs would be, the actuarial cost. Not contingent on this vote or anything like that. I just think since it's part of the broader conversation, I think it would be helpful to understand, what the dynamics of that would be. So I just wanted to request that. It can be separate from this, but I think it would be helpful to us. On the actuarial analysis, I guess the total is about $200,000 for these 20 employees. Ms. Herman, could you just explain how that works? I mean, my understanding of the drop program, which is the main aspect of this change, is that you say you're going to retire, their 3-year clock starts, and when the 3-year clock starts, where you have to retire within that time frame, you get paid for as if you had retired into a specific account, the retirement amount into a drop account, and then you continue to get paid your salary for the work that you are doing on a day-to-day basis. I don't want to say you're getting double paid, but you're getting paid in two different ways. So isn't the obligation at that point where the county would have to pay your retirement into that? Is the actuarial assumption just annualizing those costs which would be obligated at that point, or is there actually an encumbrance year in and year out for each of these employees? Like, are we saving for the money, so to speak, within the retirement system, or is that changing the contribution?
When a person elects to enter drop, we calculate their retirement benefit at that point in time. They make an election towards what distribution option they would like, joint and survivor, setting something aside for their spouse and so forth. And that money, you're right, a council member goes into an account and they pick an investment option. So, but the cost to the county, based on our experience with our drop plans that go back to 1999, police was the first drop, and then fire came after that, and then McGeo, as Bob pointed out, after that. Our experience is that people actually work longer than their normal retirement date before they enter drop. So if they know they have to leave in 3 years, they actually stay on average about an extra year and a half. That extra year and a half of service is what's costing the plan, an estimate. We don't know what will happen with this particular group, but the actuary, based on experience with the correctional officers, with fire, and with police, our experience has been it's an extra year and a half of service, which means we're going to pay a greater benefit to them when they elect to enter drop. And the amount isn't 200,000 because we're actually moving these folks from Group J to Group E. And so we're going to move the assets that support the liability over there. The net impact is actually about 25,000 for this group of 19 folks.
And that's exclusive of the drop contributions?
Well, the drop contributions, remember, they're going to get paid their retirement, whether they're in drop, it goes into an account, or they actually left the county. So we make certain actuarial assumptions that, let's take a correction officer, is going to stay 30 years. We know when we started the drop program, that 30 years may have gone to 30 years and 6 months before they decided to enter drop. They can enter drop anytime after they're eligible for normal retirement. So they actually end up working a little more. By working longer, that liability is greater because now they have 6 months or a year and a half more service in the retirement plan. That additional service results in a larger retirement benefit and more cost to the plan.
Got it. So the drop contribution, you're assuming they would have retired anyway at that exact moment. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but we'll assume that that's the assumption that we're making. And then the additional cost to the county is the fact that they're working for longer, which frankly is what we want to have happen anyway. I mean, that's the whole point of providing the benefit, is that we want to keep folks longer. Okay. All right. Last, I appreciate that. Sorry, did you have any? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say the whole background on drop for public safety is these are critical positions. And having that staggered knowledge of when they're actually going to leave the county, even though they can come back in a year and a half and say, I want to exit drop, I don't want to stay 3 years. Most of the time they are staying the 3 years based on our experience. So the whole point of that drop is that you have those positions covered while the department transitions somebody into their role.
Right, particularly in public safety where it's recruiting class based, it's a much different process for onboarding new personnel. I understand. So thank you for that. Last question. There's a question of timing, and I heard at least one colleague, if not both colleagues, say that we ought to do this now. And I don't have necessarily an issue with that. But is there a functional difference from a cost standpoint based on our contribution to the plan, whether the bill is enacted today or whether it's enacted, closer to the budget? I mean, it would seem to me that because it's a contribution timing issue with fiscal year 23, the fiscal year 22 is already passed. So that would be, the timing is a distinction without a difference as long as we do it for fiscal year 23. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. There isn't any additional cost for this year. When we do the next actuarial valuation, June 30 next year, this will be factored in. So there's no additional cost this year.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate the indulgence of colleagues. I'm happy to support the will of the committee.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedson, and you are always welcome to ask questions in this committee regardless of whatever anybody has said. So appreciate the questions and the answers. Okay, so I guess what I'm hearing is that without objection, we are going to adopt the bill as introduced.
That's what I heard. Yep.
Yep, that's what I heard too.
Okay.
All right,
3-0.
so we,
Got
with
it.
that, have taken a vote. We adopted the bill as introduced, and we will then take that to the full council. Okay, everybody, well, have a great day. Stay safe. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.